Welcome. I'm Dr. Owen Anderson, and I'm a professor of philosophy and religious studies. And I'm going to start a series on surviving a dark age. So let me explain what that means. How to survive a dark age. There might be lots of survivalist manuals and people who want to leave everything they have and go survive somewhere, physically survive. But I'm talking about something a little different. A dark age, as in a dark age of the mind, where knowledge and wisdom are rare. How would you survive that? Physically surviving such an age, you might still be contributing to it. You might have poor beliefs yourself that aren't actually contributing to the advancement of what is good. And in that condition, you're not really surviving the dark age. You're part of it. So I'm going to switch over here to my notes. What we'll do in our series on surviving a dark age. Well, first is the question, how do you even know if you're in a dark age? It might not seem too dark. I mean, if you think about our age in contrast to almost every other, and perhaps every other age in human history, we have the best stuff going for us. There's still people suffering in the world, but percentage wise and compared to the past, we're doing very well. Healthcare, education, literacy, economics, and it might seem like we're doing well and we're on the verge of doing even better. So the whole world can be raised up to this better lifestyle. So, what do you mean a dark age? And so, again, this could refer to political, and there certainly are political turmoils in our day. But compared to the past, we might say we're doing a lot better, or economic, and there's some very hard places in the world. There's no doubt about that. But here we don't mean just economic, because a lot of places you might say are doing better than any other time in human history, or healthcare, places where there's sickness everywhere, right? Basically, war, famine, plague. And as those increase, someone could say this is a dark age. There's so much war, so much famine, so much plague. But here I'm meaning a dark age of the mind, and is characterized by a lack of knowledge of basic things or first things, and even the lack of the ability to identify what those things are. If you were to ask people what they think are the most basic questions, they don't know. The answers they give are false. And the lack of ability to attain knowledge through reason and argument. People can't even identify what is reason, what is an argument. And in that condition, they're not able to get knowledge. And so that's a dark age. In fact, when they use the words reason and argument, they don't mean what those words mean. They mean something else. So we're going to spend time on that. And think about how that would affect all other parts of life. Your inability to identify basic questions and correctly answer them using reason and argument would affect politics, economics, health. You'd have people in charge who themselves can't do this. They can't identify basic things. And so the kinds of solutions that they give aren't going to be the correct ones, even if they think they're correct, obviously. So it's characterized by a lack of meaningless, or a lack of meaning, a meaninglessness. People feeling their lives are empty and meaningless and kind of just casting about, trying to fill it here or there with this or that entertainment, this or that distraction. But overall, life itself has no meaning. That's a dark age. So if that's a characteristic of your age, no matter how well you're doing in these things, this is worse. And really, ultimately, I think we see these things begin to crumble. Now, this happens. One way, maybe perhaps one test of this is the following. You can notice when the greatest intellectuals of your day make their name by arguing, which is ironic and self-contradictory, that we don't need to be able to give an account, which is from the Greek word logos, which is in, for example, the word apology, which is a defense. It's like a legal defense in the Greek idea. Nowadays, I know it means something different. Apology is more like you confessing you're wrong and I'm saying you're sorry. So The greatest intellectuals of your day make their name by arguing that we don't need to give an account to know. And if that's the case with you, then you know by this account, by the fact that this is what the intellectuals are saying, that you're in a dark age. You can give an account. You can show you're in a dark age. And that's really what knowledge is. I'll define that here in a moment. But it's not surprising that in a dark age of the life of the mind, people would confuse mental activities like thinking and believing with sensations and feelings. They would say, everyone knows deep down. For example, everyone knows God deep down, but mean everyone's aware or has a sensation which we think is God. But sensations and feelings don't give cognitive content. And the word God has cognitive content. A person, when they say God is real, believes or does not believe the following. Here's the content. God's a spirit who's infinite, eternal, and unchanging in being, wisdom, power, holiness, goodness, justice, and truth. And each of those can be further unpacked with even more cognitive content. You don't have a feeling or a sensation of those. You might have a sensation that you then put into an argument and you say, because I have this sensation, God is real, but the sensation isn't of the infinite. And that content that you're saying is either true or not. And if you think it's true, show it. Give an argument. If you think it's false, show that. But either way, learn to give sound arguments. And that's what this series is going to teach you to do, how to give sound arguments. It's also common at this kind of time to find an emphasis on the will, action, choices. And so the teaching is that everyone knows what is right and good, but they can't bring themselves to do it. That's the problem with the humans. They have a weak will or incontinence of the will. But when you ask what these people supposedly know, it goes back up here. It goes back to something non-cognitive. Everyone has a feeling about what's right or wrong, or they're aware of some other teaching like Christianity or the Ten Commandments, but they themselves don't believe the Ten Commandments are true. They're not the accurate way to live a good life. So behind a weak will is still culpable ignorance. It's still someone saying the content, God is real or God is good or God's law leads to the good, is false. And if it is false, they should be able to show that. If it isn't false, they're in culpable ignorance. That's one of the first things, back up to this paragraph, that you should know. God is real, God is good, and God's law, which leads to the good life. You should know those things. So the solution to a dark age of the mind is to learn to give sound arguments. Learn to use reason. Learn to think about basic things first. Identify concepts like God, judgments like God is real, and arguments to show that your conclusion, God is real, is in fact true. That's what we want to learn together. How do we do that? So we're gonna begin with videos simply on thinking and the basic building blocks of thinking. And I think what we'll see is that in the history of philosophy, turning points are always around epistemology. This is true for Thales and the Greek materialists versus the myths, and for Plato and Aristotle versus the materialists, for, say, Augustine and the dualists, for Descartes and this is, say, Augustine in contrast to, and Descartes versus traditional assumptions, Locke versus rationalism. And in each case, the claims about epistemology get worked out, are allowed to be worked out, and that shows where they might have been right about some things, like Plato and Aristotle are right, not all is matter, but also wrong about some things. And those incorrect things actually lead to more skepticism. And so we may be dealing with a dark age of the failure of modernity. And the Enlightenment. So I mentioned Descartes and Locke. Doesn't mean everything they said was wrong, but they didn't provide the basis for knowing the first things. And postmodernism is just kind of an acceptance of that. So yeah, there's just relativism. There's no capital T truth, no capital M meaning, just truths and meanings. So the Dark Age and that kind of postmodernism are just synonymous. So we're living with the consequences of that. And what we have to do is use this to make us, this failure to make us dig deeper and find the secure foundation. You might say, that sounds like Descartes. Well, it also sounds like the Psalms. This is just an image from building that people use as an analogy or metaphor. If you've built a house on sand, it collapses. You got to make sure you've got a solid rock on which to build the house. You might want to, you envision yourself sitting by your fire, enjoying a cup of tea inside a nice warm house. It's no fun to dig down and put down cement and rebar and get the pipes for the plumbing set up. That's not the fun part. That's not what you want to do. You want to sit in your house and enjoy a warm, cozy evening. But if you rush the foundation part, you won't get to that part you're looking for. So say no one lives in a foundation, they live in a house, sure. But without a foundation, there won't be a house, not a lasting house. And so we see that time and time again, failure to get the foundation leading to breakdown. And so if we happen to find ourselves in that kind of an age, we're born into that kind of an age, we need to use that to make us get that foundation in place. So we'll also be learning here how to identify assumptions, basic things, how to use reason and argument to have knowledge of basic things, and in doing that, get that foundation in place in order to go on. So I'm looking forward to you joining me in our series, How to Survive a Dark Age.